It was a quiet Friday evening when Jake returned home from work, his heart light with the thought of the weekend ahead. He had been working long hours lately, but he knew that the time spent with his wife, Emma, and their daughter Lily would make up for it. The house was peaceful as he entered, the soft glow of lamps casting a warm light through the living room. He dropped his briefcase by the door and called out to his wife. "Emma." "Lily?" he asked, his voice filled with an unspoken anticipation. The sound of footsteps quickly followed, and Lily, their 8-year-old daughter, appeared with a wide grin on her face. "Hi, Daddy," she exclaimed, rushing to hug him. Jake embraced her with a smile, his heart swelling with love. He glanced up at Emma, who appeared moments later, looking as radiant as ever. She greeted him with a soft kiss on the cheek, and though her smile seemed genuine, there was something in her eyes that Jake couldn't quite place. As the evening went on, Emma seemed a little distracted, constantly checking her phone. Every time Jake glanced over, she quickly shoved it into her purse or turned it face down. She suggested they all sit down for dinner, but there was a strange tension in the air. Jake chalked it up to her busy schedule, but he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in his gut. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Jake decided to confront Emma. The dimly lit living room felt too quiet as he sat down beside her on the couch. "Emma," he began gently, "is everything okay? You've seemed a little off lately. You've been so preoccupied." Emma hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her phone. "I'm just tired, Jake. It's nothing." Jake felt a pang of doubt, but he didn't press further. He had always trusted Emma, and the last thing he wanted was to accuse her without reason. But as the days went on, things only grew stranger. Emma became more secretive, avoiding his questions and becoming increasingly distant. The once easy conversations between them had turned into awkward silences. It wasn't until one evening a week later that Jake's worst fears were confirmed. He had come home early from work to surprise Emma, but instead, he was the one who was taken by surprise. As he entered the house, he noticed a car parked outside, one he didn't recognize. Curiosity gnawed at him, and he quietly made his way through the hall. The voices coming from the bedroom caught his attention. His heart skipped a beat when he recognized Emma's voice, but it wasn't just Emma. There was another voice, deep, familiar, and undeniably male. Jake's hand trembled as he reached for the door, peeking through the crack. There, in the dimly lit room, Emma was in the arms of another man. His chest tightened as he watched them, the betrayal sinking in like a knife. He couldn't look away, though every part of him wanted to run. Back in the living room, Lily was playing with her toys, oblivious to the chaos that was unfolding just a few rooms away. She had always been close to her mother, and Emma had never given any sign of being unfaithful. But now, in the quiet of the house, Jake couldn't escape the truth. The guilt and heartbreak overwhelmed him, but he knew he couldn't confront Emma just yet. Not with Lily around. For the time being, he pretended nothing had changed, waiting for the right moment to confront his wife about the affair. But deep down, Jake knew their family would never be the same again. For now, he focused on Lily, trying to shield her from the unraveling reality. His mind raced as he wondered how Emma could betray their love so easily, and why she would let Lily live in a home where such a lie could flourish. The days after that painful revelation were a blur for Jake. He went through the motions of daily life, speaking to Emma only when necessary. The once vibrant warmth of their home felt like a cold, suffocating shell. He avoided confronting her directly, unable to look her in the eye without feeling the deep ache of betrayal. Lily, as always, remained blissfully unaware of the tension between her parents. She continued to run around the house, laughing and playing, her innocence a painful reminder of what was slipping away. Emma, however, seemed to wear a mask, pretending everything was fine as though nothing had changed. It hurt Jake to see her act as though her secret was some kind of game, but he could not bring himself to expose the truth in front of their daughter. Then, one evening after dinner, Jake finally reached his breaking point. The lies, the silence, and the constant feeling of being deceived were too much. He couldn't go on living in a house where everything felt like a lie. Emma sat across from him at the kitchen table, her eyes flicking nervously toward her phone, but for once, she didn't turn it away. "Emma," Jake began, his voice shaking with both anger and sadness. "I know." Her face paled as she slowly set her phone down. "What do you mean? You can stop pretending." "I know about him," Jake said, his voice low but firm. I saw you with him." "How long, Emma? How long has this been going on?" Emma's face flushed with a mixture of guilt and panic. She opened her mouth to speak but found no words. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to scream, to demand every answer, but something held him back. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do this to me, to our family?" She sat in silence for a long moment before she spoke, her words barely audible. "I don't know. I felt neglected, Jake. You were always working, always busy, and I didn't feel seen anymore. I didn't feel loved." Jake's heart cracked. He had always been there for Emma, always tried to provide for their family, but the realization hit him hard. He had failed her in ways he hadn't even recognized. But as much as her words stung, they didn't change the reality of what had happened. She had chosen someone else. And in doing so, she had shattered everything they had built together. His trust, his heart, their home. Everything felt broken beyond repair. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but Jake couldn't find it in himself to comfort her. "Not anymore." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice full of regret. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, you did," Jake replied, his tone flat, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. "And now we have to face it." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stood up and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Emma sitting there, her face buried in her hands. As he walked toward their bedroom to grab a few things, he thought of Lily. She deserved so much more than this. Jake knew he couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies, not when it was starting to feel like a house of cards ready to collapse. He spent the next few hours making arrangements to stay somewhere else for a while, all the while fighting the urge to let the hurt spill out. It was almost unbearable, but Jake focused on one thing: protecting Lily. He didn't want her to see the unraveling of her family, not yet. Emma was already dealing with the consequences of her actions, but Lily was still too young to understand. That night, after he'd packed a few essentials, he told Emma that he was leaving. Her face crumpled in shock and fear, but Jake couldn't give in to her pleas. "I need some space," he said, his voice hard. "We both do." As he stepped out of the house, he cast one final glance at the living room, where Lily had been playing just hours earlier. His heart broke for her. She deserved a happy family, not one torn apart by betrayal. He promised himself that no matter what happened between him and Emma, he would always be there for her. Emma and Jake's marriage may have been irreparably damaged, but Jake refused to let their daughter's world be destroyed by their mistakes. He would find a way to make things right, even if that meant walking away from everything he thought he knew about love and trust. In the days that followed, Jake filed for separation. He worked through the pain of it all while trying to shield Lily from the fallout. Emma, still caught in the web of her choices, struggled to understand the gravity of the situation. But for Jake it was clear. This was the price of betrayal. And as much as he wished he could turn back time, he knew that there was no going back. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotions for Jake. Every day, he struggled with the conflicting feelings of pain, anger, and sorrow. The life he thought he had, the family he thought he could always rely on, was slipping through his fingers, and he had no idea how to put it all back together. He continued to live in the small apartment he had rented, trying to find some semblance of peace amidst the chaos. The walls, though bare and uninviting, were a refuge of sorts, free from the constant reminders of Emma's betrayal. But even in this space, Jake couldn't escape the thoughts that haunted him. He'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Lily and the gaping hole this divorce was going to leave in her life. He hated that she would have to grow up with broken parents, but there was no easy way to undo what had happened. Emma, for her part, seemed desperate to fix things, but it felt too little too late. She would call him late at night, leaving messages begging for forgiveness, asking for a chance to explain herself further. Jake couldn't bring himself to listen. The trust was gone, and no amount of words would change the reality of what she had done. But despite his anger, he couldn't entirely close the door on their relationship. There was still a part of him that remembered the woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who had once been his partner, his equal. But that woman seemed distant now, replaced by someone who had chosen a path of deceit. One afternoon, as Jake was sitting at the kitchen table in his apartment, lost in thought, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma, simple but urgent. "Can we talk, please?" For Lily. Jake stared at the message for several long moments, his finger hovering over the keyboard. For a while, he had kept his distance, only responding when necessary, but he knew that he couldn't avoid the conversation forever. He had to figure out how to move forward, not just for his sake but for Lily's. He agreed to meet her the next afternoon. When they sat across from each other at a small coffee shop the following day, the tension between them was palpable. Emma looked tired, her eyes red and puffy, as if she hadn't been sleeping well. She had lost some of her former vibrance, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. Jake, in turn, felt emotionally drained, but he held himself together. "Jake, I'm so sorry," Emma started, her voice cracking. "I know I've hurt you and I can never take that back. But I need you to understand. I never meant to destroy our family. I was just lost. I thought I could find something outside of us, but it was a mistake. A huge mistake." Jake listened, his gaze fixed on the table in front of him. He didn't know what he was expecting, but somehow, this apology felt empty. Words were just words, and the truth was still that she had chosen someone else. "I know," Jake said quietly. "But it wasn't just about you and me, Emma. It's about Lily too. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve to grow up in a house where everything feels like a lie." Emma's face crumpled, and tears welled up in her eyes. "No, Jake. No. And I will do anything to make it right for her. Please don't take her away from me." Jake's heart softened slightly at the sight of Emma's pain. He knew this wasn't easy for her either, but he couldn't ignore the fact that she had made a choice, and that choice had consequences. "I'm not trying to take Lily away from you," Jake said, his voice steady. "But we can't keep pretending that everything is fine. I want what's best for her, and right now that means figuring out how to navigate this new reality. We have to be honest with her. We owe her that much." Emma nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I know," she whispered. "I just don't know how to fix this." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know either. But we have to try for her. She needs stability, even if we can't give her the life we had before." The conversation lingered for a while longer, but in the end, it was clear that there were no easy answers. The pain wasn't going to vanish overnight, and neither of them had any guarantees of how things would turn out. But they agreed on one thing: Lily was the priority. They both loved her, and that love had to be the foundation of whatever came next. Over the next few months, Jake and Emma continued to navigate their new lives, though the road was anything but smooth. They took turns caring for Lily, but their interactions were strained and often awkward. Jake tried to co-parent with Emma as best as he could, but the trust between them was shattered, and there were still moments when the anger bubbled to the surface. Lily, for her part, seemed to take it all in stride, her childlike innocence serving as a balm for both of their wounds. She was young, and she couldn't fully comprehend the complexity of the situation, but she loved both her parents, and they both loved her. In time they hoped that would be enough. Jake often found himself reflecting on the past, on what went wrong, and on what he could have done differently. He still didn't have all the answers, but he knew that life was moving forward, whether he was ready or not. Emma's betrayal had torn apart the life he had known, but Jake refused to let it destroy him, or his daughter. The path ahead wasn't clear, but one thing was certain. He was going to fight for a better future, even if it meant rebuilding everything from the ground up.